Good afternoon and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. We hope you have enjoyed your bank holiday. We run weekly webinars aimed to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. And joining me today is BizSmart Select member Philippe Ingalls from Waxter. In today's webinar, Philippe will help us to get the wow factor into our social media activities, websites and presentations. Philippe, would you like to tell us more about the work you do at Waxter?
Hi, good afternoon everyone. At Waxter we help companies find and create their wow factor, and we use that to make them irresistible to their prospective clients and existing clients. And we package this wow factor in various different formats such as video, websites, presentations and so forth. And today, yes, we're going to explore a little bit about what wow factor is.
Thank you, Philippe. Before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions you may have, and Philippe will answer them all at the end of the session. So over to Philippe.
In this webinar, we will have a very brief look at what wow factor is, why you need it in your business, and where or how to get it. Now, the definition of wow factor, or one of the definitions, is it is a quality that makes someone feel excited or surprised when they experience something. Now, with the word like quality in a definition, that always means some difficult to define something that causes an emotional reaction when you come into contact with that. So hopefully in this webinar we will clarify a little bit what this difficult to define something is. For your business, wow factor, because it's an emotional reaction, does a lot of things. It's definitely something that draws more attention to your business. It makes your business a lot more memorable. You're more likely to get referrals from having wow factor, and that's basically because you are more memorable. You're more likely to have your information shared by people, and put all these things together, you're much more likely to get sales compared to not using wow factor. Now, there are two ways of saying something. You can either say the same thing in the same way that everyone else does, or you can be remarkable and say things refreshingly different. The interesting thing about communication is that most people online really want to find that something in your business that makes you stand out, because nobody really reacts to grey sameness. What we really want to know is, can we build a long-term relationship with this business? That is what really matters. And people don't build lasting relationships with boring companies. They want to feel excited. They want to experience feel-good factor. They want to know about your company's personality, its stories, and its ability to surprise. And it's not your product or features that is your wow factor, or how good you are, or what you do, or how long you've been doing it. Because people have heard those type of things from your competition as well. The one problem is, if you do not give people this wow factor, if you don't expose them to what makes your business special, then they go and look for the only thing that they can find that differentiates you, and that is price. And unless you sell commodity products, price is the last thing you want people to buy on. What you really need is you need to stand out. You need to be awesome, lovable, approachable, interesting, unique. You can even be a little bit human. And you need oodles of wow factor. Finding a wow factor is that part of your business communication that really needs to come before you do anything else, because it's the hook onto which you hang everything else. Your website, your marketing, your social media, your presentations, your videos, the way you answer the phone, the way you decorate your office. All those things need to come before you actually start communicating about your business. And wow factor is about attracting attention, not desperately seeking it. It is about doing things differently to what everyone else is doing it. Wow factor is also about what we call in marketing creating stickiness. You want people to stick in. You want your content, your business to stick in people's minds. You want them to stick at your website so that they go through all your content that you have on there rather than just quickly pass through it. You want them to stick with your marketing content. If you produce videos or presentations or social media content, you want them to stick around and really absorb all the content that you have on there. Stickiness is what gets people to pay attention to your entire message, not just the first 8 seconds. It's the thing that gets you remembered, the thing that's going to get you more referrals, the thing that people talk about, and also, interestingly enough, it's a thing that Google loves to rank high, because Google looks at how much your content is talked about, how much it is shared, and according to that and very complex algorithms, it ranks the websites. The marketing has changed more over the past 2 years than probably in the past 50 years. According to some research, advertising is about half as effective as it was 20 years ago. The reason is that people are increasingly buying on reviews, on recommendations, and on searches, and not so much on what the marketing and advertising message is. The basic philosophy is, if it works for you, it might work for me as well. The question is, why is this change in attitude happening? If you have easy access to endless choice, and that is basically what the internet has given us these days, it is difficult to choose right. And if every option proclaims to be the best one, then who do you believe? The result is that you become more reluctant to listen to the marketer because they are really all saying the same thing. And you need to go and ask the expert or other users or a friend or acquaintance that have actually experienced that product. It has become increasingly difficult, sometimes almost pointless, to try and persuade people to consider your product. They don't want to hear from you. They want to hear from the sources they trust. And all you can do really in the end is explain and confirm why you are the company to buy from once they've been persuaded by those that they trust. But still, we need to market ourselves. So what do we do? Well, persuasion is all about understanding how the mind works. And because that's the part that needs the persuading. So let's do a bit of geek talk and look at how the human operating system works, the mind. And when life was considerably more perilous than it is today, we relied on 4 simple principles to survive. The first thing was, if something looked or acted differently in our environment, we paid attention to it, just in case you can eat it or it wants to eat you. If it wasn't immediately apparent what it was or what it wants to do, you had to continue paying attention to it so you could figure out exactly what it wants to do or what you can do with it. And once you figured out what it does and you got a good feeling about it, you ate it or you procreated with it. And then, of course, you had to go around increasing your social status by telling everyone how cool and valuable you are to the tribe for having discovered this amazing new thing. Now, marketing today works a lot on the same basic principles. You need to be different, you need to be engaging, you need to make an emotional connection, and you need to get others to tell about how cool your product is. And when you give people something different and engaging and something that makes an emotional connection, then they are much more likely to go around telling everyone what they found. So here's a very simple formula. The more you impress people by your wow factor, the more likely they will be to tell others about it. And the more you get shared, the more likely it becomes that people will start sending you referrals. And those referrals will have a look at your wow factor, be impressed, and so the cycle continues. And that's great marketing. And the interesting thing about this process is you create a wow factor that impressed them, and really people then do the marketing for you by sharing that information. Let's have a quick look at a couple of examples of how wow factor was created by very big brands. We all know the Duracell bunny. So if you sell batteries, it is no good to simply go around and paint your battery to look a different color. That's a bit like adding your logo and getting different colors for your website. And it's no use to tell everyone that this differently colored battery is the best one, because all the battery operators basically say the same thing. So what Duracell did was they stuck their battery onto a pink bunny, and they got this bunny to show us how well their battery was, by the pink bunny outlasting all the other bunnies. It was fun, it was different, it added a lot of personality to the battery, and it used storytelling to make the point. So they added a lot of wow factor, and it played a key part in making them the #1 alkaline battery brand in the world. Here's another example I'm sure everyone is familiar with. Compare the market, meerkats have become nothing short of a marketing phenomenon, completely transforming what used to be a rather dull way of advertising for that industry. Olaf and the other meerkats has captured the hearts and minds of the public, and hundreds of thousands of people now follow them on Facebook and Twitter. And it has moved this brand from being fourth in brand awareness to first position. So earlier on we said that advertising has become a lot less effective than it was 20 years ago, right? Well, here's another example of something that bucks this trend. In 2013, Metro Rails in Australia wanted to encourage people to be safe around trains. So they created a short video called Dumb Ways to Die. And it was released on YouTube as a 3-minute animated video. It was originally actually only released to one journalist. By April 2014, the video had been viewed 77 million times on YouTube and gathered an estimated $60 million in earned revenue, media revenue, in the first 6 weeks of the campaign. So that added oodles of wow factor, and all the marketing was primarily done by the audience. So one of the big questions is, does everyone need wow factor? But those examples we just looked at are all big budget brands competing on a national or international stage. The question is, does SMEs need wow factor? And my honest answer is no, not everyone needs wow factor. I, for one, don't want my competition to have any wow factor. So where do you start to get wow factor? And there are 3 basic questions we need to ask before we start. The first is, what is your wow factor? What does it look like? And how will you communicate it? The first step you need to do is you first need to find out what it is you do. That might sound like a simple task, but it's not always that simple, because it's not your products and services, and it's not your job description, but it is the result of what you do for the client and what kind of experience they have as a consequence of what you do. For example, an estate planner doesn't do trust and wills and power of attorney. If an estate planner goes around and say, this is what I do trust, well, then he's in competition with all the other estate planners saying, that's what we do trust. And there's no differentiation between those brands. What an estate planner actually does is they offer protection to create peace of mind. So the next step is to start getting really creative and shake up the tree. Creativity is essentially combining ideas in novel ways so that they still make sense and serve some purpose. So the key part is to try and create these ideas that are relevant to your business, and start recombining them, changing them around in ways that still make sense and would serve a purpose to differentiate your brand and add that wow factor. So you look at things like, what do those words that defines what you do, what do those words actually really mean? What do they relate to? What relates to them? You can look for synonyms. Definitely get your thesaurus out. That really helps. You look at each word in different ways and mix them up together. What you're really after is, what you're looking for is a different, more creative, fun, entertaining way of telling people about the result of what you do or can do for them and the kind of experience they have as a consequence. Let's take Waxter and this presentation as an example. So we help companies get noticed and loved by adding wow factor. As a consequence, we make them irresistible. Getting noticed means being different. So you already see with all the pencils that we use where these differences are starting to come in. So making yourself different requires creativity, and pencils are very synonymous with creativity. So pencils are also a commodity type product that requires differentiation. So add creativity and differentiation to pencils, and you've got a basis of creating pencils in wildly different contexts. So by playing around with words and ideas, you start finding the building blocks that helps you create the ideas that support your wow factor. So the next part of the process is to find a headline and tagline that defines exactly what the specialness is about your business. So people really get what it is you offer. It's one sentence that actually hits dead center what it is you do and spells out exactly why you are different from your competition. And again, it all starts by defining exactly what it is you do rather than your products and services, and then playing around with words to try and find the type of words that lead to creative ideas of looking at the things you do in a different way. Then the next step, once you have your tagline, your strapline, you know exactly what it is, and you've got a whole bunch of words that are very creative in terms of defining what you do, you need to then package the specialness in a powerful visuals so it really stands apart. It really needs to stick in people's mind and get them excited about your business. Now, why is visual so important? Well, tweets with images receive 18% more clicks, 98% more favorites, and 150 more retweets than tweets without visuals. In a recent survey, 70% of marketers plan to increase the use of original visual assets in 2015. A company called socialbakers.com looked at the top 10% of posts made by more than 30,000 Facebook branded pages, or brand pages as opposed to personal pages, and found that posts with photos saw the most engagement, accounting for a whopping 87% of total interactions. So you can see that how important visuals become in terms of packaging your wow factor. So now you've discovered your wow factor, you've headlined and taglined it, you've packaged it in visual wow factor, and this means that you're now ready to roll out your wow factor to the public. You now need to transform all your business communications with this wow factor. That means your website, your videos, your social media, your marketing, presentations, newsletters, your email footers, proposals, the way your office is painted, your business cards, the way you answer your phone, everything becomes part of this wow factor. And then you're ready to share this wow factor with people out there. Again, you use the social media platforms to expose people to this wow factor. Another way is to use video video becomes a very, very powerful way of presenting this wow factor to the public. And the better you are at creating this wow factor, the better this wow factor for your company is. Again, the more people are going to talk about it, the more people are going to share it, the more referrals you're likely to have, and the more sales you're likely to produce from this. And that is why you need wow factor. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you, Philippe. That was brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you all enjoyed that. I'm now going to ask if you have any questions for Philippe. Just going to give that a couple of seconds. So here we go with our first question. What is the biggest obstacle in getting that wow factor that you've talked about?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I think there's two ways of looking at that question. The first is fear factor. In marketing, we really need to try and stand out. But as humans, we tend to try and blend in with the crowd. And I suppose that still comes from, when we were still in the primitive times, and when we were hunted. If you are something like a wildebeest in the African savanna, one of the problems with standing out is that you become the target for the predator. So what animals tend to do is kind of blend into the pride so that nobody can see, so it just becomes a noise in a sense. So that's what that's our comfort zone in a sense. But the problem is, in marketing, noise don't get you recognized. You really do want to stand out. You really do want to differentiate yourself. But often that takes a lot of guts. Because you're the one that everyone is going to look at then and say, oh, look at what that person's done. There's ways of getting around that fear factor, and that's by basically being very careful in the process of defining what your wow factor is. But fear is really one of the main factors. And then there's also creativity. It takes creativity to try and come up with something that's completely original that nobody else has done. And you need those two elements. You need to get rid of the fear and become creative.
Thank you. Another question here from Steve. Do you have any ideas for anyone who isn't particularly creative?
Yes. By following those steps that I've kind of tried to outline there, to really just play around with words, that kind of gets the creative juices flowing, even though you think you might not have creative juices. The other thing is to really use the web actively and browse around. Look at other, not just people in your own industry, but look around at what other people does in different industries. Because creativity really is about picking up ideas all over the place and start combining them in unique ways. And then, of course, if you're really, really stuck, then you can always ask me.
Yeah. Another question here from Andy. Presumably, it's good to get client feedback when thinking about what we do. What's the best way to get that feedback? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, I mean, the best way to get that feedback is really to, to pick up the phone them, ask them directly. You can also, do surveys through social media if it's, questions that you want to ask, which is not, not sensitive questions. Your friends and family, you can ask them, although, their opinions are sometimes a bit biased. And definitely go and ask, your suppliers, what they think. But asking, making sure what people think about your ideas and all that, you're absolutely right. It's a critical part. But often also you need to be very careful in terms of that feedback to make sure that it is in the right context. Because people often feel uncomfortable with, different things. But if you look in the history of marketing, if you look at those videos that we've shown, of Duracell bunny, the meerkats, the dumb ways to die. You know, they've all now become, you know, we've all become comfortable with those ideas at the moment. But when they were rolling it out, if you think about it, you know, you compare the market, you know, compare pricing website, and you need to go start connecting this this kind of, you know, facts and figure type of business to meerkats. You know, that took a huge risk, but because they've done it, you know, they've reaped the rewards of that. So, you know, when asking people, make sure that the answers you get are not based on, you know, their fears, but actually, you know, is the thing that might make your business succeed.
Right. Thank you. Hope that's answered that one for you, Andy. So I really just want to say many thanks, Philippe, for that brilliant session. I learned a lot from that as well. I'm going to be sending out a copy of this presentation and Philippe's contact details to you all very shortly. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I hope you put Lunch and Learn webinars as a regular slot in your calendar every Tuesday at 12:30. So we look forward to seeing you next week. So on behalf of Philippe and myself, we hope you have a great afternoon and thank you for your time today.